One.
Hello, welcome back to Out of the Darkness. I am your host, Q. Thank you guys. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here. Super excited to be back and back in the studio, back on the stream with you guys to be able to bring you some perfectly executed arguments and debates. Today's going to be absolutely exciting. It's exciting to have our distinguished panel here with us today. We're going to be talking about some things that are near and dear to my heart, but also some thought provoking things. So it's excited to have everybody here. If you are new to Out of the Darkness, be sure to subscribe hit the little bell below. I'm going to get into it and start introducing the folks that we have with us. First and foremost, I'm going to introduce our brand new, you'll see a new face here, Stephen Powell, a good friend of mine from way, way back growing up. And we've kind of acquainted ourselves over the last few months. And life has taken us in some pretty interesting directions, but kind of taken us in a more libertarian leaning way. So it's kind of cool to see that. And of course, you guys know Mr. the Honorable Tim Miller. Thank you for being here, buddy. And we all know Soder. Soder, I feel like we need to change the logo to a side image of Soder with a cigar out of his mouth. He'll be like the modern day Winston Churchill.
I don't
Yeah.
drink nearly enough champagne.
Well, hey, there's goals, buddy. There's goals. But thank you guys very much for being here. I want to kind of get into it. So, Stephen, I know you've got some things to do, and Tim, I know you've got some things to do. It's going to be an interesting show. It's going to be an interesting show for one major reason. The one major reason being this will be the first time I think that me and Tim might actually be on the same side. Um, we might be, which is scary to me. It's very scary to me. I might have to rethink my life a little bit and some of my life choices. But who knows? I'll keep an open mind. But no, all jokes aside, thank you guys for being here. We've been talking a lot. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the political spectrum and in the world in general. I know, just to get everybody all riled up, yeah, it turns out Elon Omar is more of a fraud than I thought. So that's just a plug for the Star Tribune, just in case they're listening. Yeah, absolutely more of a fraud than I thought that she was before. Um, Explain to me real quick, because I know you, Tim. I don't want to get you in trouble, so you can. If I start to say something that might get you in trouble, just shut the camera off. But
Only I can say things to get myself in trouble.
well, okay, I didn't want you to be guilty by association, buddy. So
Too late.
so so it turns out that she's in a little bit of heat for possibly being in an extramarital affair involved in
Oh
that.
no. Oh,
Yeah. So I mean, this devout religious woman who is supposed to be an inspiration to us all, and devout Muslim. Which, at the end of the day, I don't care. I really don't care if somebody decides that we've had Muslims in our country since the founding of our country. I went through a rather lengthy conversation with our youngest son today, just explaining to him a little bit more about the founding of our country and how religious freedom was at the core of that. But there's no doubt that America is a Christian nation, and it was founded with Judeo-Christian values. But the interesting part to me is that for someone who is so devout in their Islamic faith, um, would be married by a Christian pastor. That, to me, I can't get over. That
trying to
just
get
doesn't.
cute.
Huh? What was that, Tim? Okay, I think we lost Tim. But
Keep talking, but I lost you, so I'll get back on.
I knew there was going to be a boomer
Uh-oh.
moment at some point.
So we just had to talk. We just had to ask. We just had to taunt the boomer gods.
So, but Stephen, so tell me this. So how do you make sense of that? How do you make sense of someone who is, and this isn't our primary topic, but just for nothing. I mean, how do you make sense of the fact that you have a person who is supposedly devoutly Muslim and is supposed to be a zealot for the Islamic faith, and I believe in Islam and in Christianity, marriage vows are to be taken very seriously. Um, if you cannot take your vows or your oath of office on a Bible, but you can be married in a Christian church by a Christian pastor, would you not deduct that there might be some inconsistencies there?
Well, so I might be able to. I don't know how informed my opinion is. Since you left the great state of Alaska, we've actually got kind of a more sizable Muslim population. I've got a couple of Muslim friends, and I've got a Muslim coworker. We talk a lot, and apparently in Islam, they view themselves as sort of in the soft and IT what we call it backward compatible.
I screwed something up with my sound, so.
Oh.
I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly.
Okay. So they view themselves as somewhat backwards compatible in that they can receive services from rabbis and from pastors. And that's sort of been how Islam has historically allowed itself to operate, especially where Muslims were the minority. So she probably is not inconsistent with sort of a historical interpretation of Islam and letting herself be married by a Christian pastor. But there's still some prohibitions, like they still can't eat. They're in a very strict religious interpretation. They can't eat with Christians because Christians may have used their utensils for unclean meats, but they can eat with Jews. But they can receive, they can have weddings and funerals done by and circumcisions done by Christians and Jews. So I don't think that that's inconsistent with Islam itself, but it definitely in all three faiths, the idea that what you say is what vows that you make is that covenant sort of idea is extremely strong in all three faiths, and for her to take that so lightly, I think in her life, she's sort of a younger woman and she's had a lot of sort of marital issues. I think that on a as a person of faith, I would look at a person like that and say, I understand that you're a human being. You've got your own issues, your problems. You've got to live your life how you feel. But I just don't know that you're necessarily. I don't want you to see that you're representative of my faith or my faith community when what your actions are inconsistent with our faith community.
So that's interesting. So that leads me to kind of another point that I wanted to bring up to you, but I also wanted to bring up to Tim. And Tim and I have kind of talked about it, but over the last, I'd say probably 2 weeks, because of friends of mine and because of different situations, I've been forced to put a lot of thought into this question I'm going to ask you. And when it comes to the government, I think we would all agree that America was founded with some strong Christian principles. Would you disagree with that, Tim? Okay. Would you disagree with that, Stephen?
Oh no, I definitely think that the Christian values heavily influenced the leadership of our country, even if many of them themselves were not devout practitioners of Christianity. I think they were that sort of Christian culture, especially sort of an Elizabethan culture, definitely and those values heavily influenced our founders.
And so with that being said, I mean, how much in government and in governing, how much are you comfortable with the Christian faith being influencing policy?
Well, is that question for me or for someone else?
Well, I mean, if Tim is back, I'd love for him
back on.
Okay, so I'd like to hear from both of you guys. So Tim, let me start off with you, and Stephen, I'd like to hear from you too. So, I mean, I understand that we are a Christian nation, or we were a Christian nation. We're founded to be a Christian nation. Um, we say that not because of what we do, but because of the principles that we were established because of, and with. But how comfortable are you, Tim? First off, as a legislator, um, and at what point does your faith do you have to check your faith at the door in order to legislate? Or how much of your faith are you allowed to use, or do you feel comfortable with using as it pertains to um, your policy?
Well, I think these are great questions, and these are questions that are being asked actually at the Capitol itself. Um, One of the things that I've discovered when we get on a subject like this, are we a Christian nation? How should my Christian, because I'm an evangelical Christian, how should that apply to the work that I do as an elected person? Um, a couple of the things that need to be established that I don't know that we're all going to agree. We're using lots of similar terms, but they probably mean things to different people. So I won't bore you all too much with an exhaustive description of what this means, but let me be real brief with it. So when I hear the term we're a Christian nation, I don't even know what that means. What I do know is that our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, a lot of the different documents that were used to support all of this stuff are completely infused with Christian beliefs, standards, doctrine, all sorts of different things. I went through a study last year where this pastor actually marked every single. I mean, we went through an exhaustive thing over weeks, and it's pretty amazing how it was established. And no, not all the founding fathers, as we refer to them, were Christians. Some were deists, some were whatever. But I do believe that our fundamental principles are based, and you guys have heard me say this here before, that we believe there's a creator, that man answers to the creator, and government answers to man. That's a little bit out of sync right now, but that's the model that I go by, and that's what I think of. Now, when it comes to me personally, you asked the question, do I have to leave my Christianity checked at the door, or how does that look? I don't do that at all. My faith is who I am. It's what drives me daily. Not perfect. I'm not saying I'm like Jesus Christ, but I try to pursue being like Jesus Christ. And that's not going to leave any room that I'm in or any conversation. So do I get on the floor and give sermons? No, I don't. But I've spoken words from the Bible before on the House floor. I've uttered God's name on the floor before. In the Minnesota House, we pray to God every single day that session opens. So I see no reason to, whatever it means, to leave my religion at the door, or leave my Christianity at the door. I'm just simply not going to do that, and I'll let the voters decide what they think about that.
Excellent. And so, Stephen, where because I specifically asked this question because on Facebook there was a post, and we were discussing the next topic as we're going to get into it, about the wall, right? And we were discussing illegal immigration specifically, and the issues surrounding illegal immigration, and not necessarily from you. I went back and looked at the post and things like that, and there was a lot of talk um, about certain decisions being immoral, okay, because of what the scriptures say, right? But America is a nation of many different people and many different faiths and many different groups of people. So with that, I mean, we're not a theocracy. Um, we're not a theonomy. So with that being said, how do you feel? At what point do you feel that we have to change some of our or if we have to at all, change some of our principles, or at least consider other principles in our policy.
So I think this is where I step back and I say, do I look at myself as do I look at what I advocate as something that's historically Christian or historically Baptist? And the reason I would make that distinction is because when we talk about Christianity, there is so much variety there that a lot of sociologists don't even like to refer to Christianity as a single religion, because there's such a vast means of interpreting that. So looking at myself as a Baptist, I've got a Baptist history is sort of a passion of mine. You look at the Baptists in the Middle Ages, especially, and they refused to baptize the King of Sweden because they felt like at that time the belief was that Christians couldn't be in government because it was not the role of a man to rule over another man. So that's why actually the King of Sweden became a Protestant. But and which actually ended up turning the tide of the 30 Years' War later on. But the idea was that man should voluntarily submit to God's law. So as someone who wants to see Christian values reflected in the government, I think that the best way to do that would be, for a lot of these more moral issues, for just people to voluntarily choose to make whatever moral choices that they feel is best. And so, for example, if I don't like my neighbor's lifestyle, I don't want the government to go in and enforce my will upon my neighbor. I would like for them to be free to make their own choices and be answerable to God, and then I would have the duty and obligation to plead with them to make the right choices. So for example, if I don't like the fact that my neighbor is living with a woman out of wedlock, for example, the Bible calls that adultery. It's not. There was a time when the government would step in times like that, and there were. And not necessarily all over our country, but in some places. And so, but I don't think that's the government's place. I think that it's my place as his neighbors to plead with him to first of all to know Christ as his Savior, and secondly to voluntarily submit to the laws that the rules of conduct that we find in the Scriptures. And so that's sort of. Maybe that's a long answer to what you were asking about Christianity and government.
No, it's really interesting, and I guess the reason why I'm kind of going down this road, Tim, and Stephen and Soder, is because I just picked up a book from Neil Gorsuch, and it's entitled "A Republic If You Can Keep It," based off of Benjamin Franklin's famous quote. But what struck me is, and it's taken me a little bit to get through it, just because there's little parts where I kind of have to reflect on, and the opening statements within the Constitution, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Man, that's problematic, is it not? I mean, because which truths, whose truths? You hear so much in the media now, this is my truth, or my truth is. And well, I mean, is that where we missed the boat, Tim? Is that where we got off the path? Did we get off the path because we don't have a common truth? We don't even have a common truth teller. We don't even have a common belief system anymore. And so because of that, we have many different people holding many different truths, which I think has become problematic in the root of a lot of our disagreements. We see, of course, what was 13 colonies? I bet Stephen would probably know a close number as far as the total population of the country in 1776. Unfortunately, I do not know, but I know that it was much smaller population than what we have today. But if you don't have that as a meeting place, if you don't have that common truth, it seems like it becomes very difficult to govern, because there's no single identity. And does that make sense to you, Tim, or am I just being a nerd?
No, I think there's some truth into it. And what you see, and this is how I see it historically, was the fundamental change probably happened about the time of the Industrial Revolution. And now there's different things. Industrial Revolution happened about the time that there's a revolution in science. There is um, a revolution in psychology, sociology, all these different things, and in kind of an awareness changed to where, for the first time in the United States, we always had secularism, we had Islam, we had different faith systems, but the United States was fundamentally driven off of what we broadly call, and I think we can all generally accept, a Judeo-Christian belief system. And as Stephen said, there's many different iterations of that, but there were some fundamental principles that you saw in the United States. What you may be seeing now, this is my belief, is that there's been a tipping of the scale to where that Judeo-Christian belief system that fundamentally drove a lot of the things that we did and really drove the boat is no longer driving the boat. Now, I'm not saying it's gone. I'm not saying who's driving the boat. I have my suspicions, and on my cranky days, I have some rather negative opinions of what's going on. But I think that's fundamentally what we're seeing going on right now. And in the predominant secular world belief, they wouldn't call it this because they don't necessarily call it this, but it's a very humanist flavor right now. Live and let live. Really, there is either no God or God is irrelevant to so many of our things. I define what my truth is. What my truth is different from yours, and people like me here say there's no absolute truth anymore, but there's some truth. There's some relative truth to that. So anyway, but that's what you see. I also, as a Christian, I'm going to add an extra layer to that. From my perspective, I've been looking at our society and say, what are some of the things that are going on? You talk about what's troubling us right now. And for me, I don't think we fear and we don't rely on our creator. And you can define who that creator is, but I think we depend on ourselves. And it's good to feel independent, right? But that's also causing us to go in many different directions. It's causing people, if my reality is in conflict with yours, I want mine to win. Why? Because in our society, historically, one of two things happen. If you're losing, you either get on the smallest end, you get marginalized and pushed off into irrelevancy. A next step up is your life is controlled by someone, into slavery, into death. You die if you are not on top of the heap. So that's what I see as right now, is we have a jockeying for position and irrelevance. And what makes me important, has to do with the abortion issue. We did the assisted suicide bill this last week in a committee hearing in the Minnesota House. I think this is the troubles that we're seeing with human trafficking, drug abuse. I can go on and on and on. Our society is in flux right now, and I don't know where it's going. I'd like to think that another enlightenment period is coming. We might also just be driving off the cliff, and we're going to become whatever we're going to become in 50 years.
Were you a co-sponsor on that bill?
No.
Okay.
No. I was there to listen to my phone died this week, so I've been kind of limping along with information, but it's not called assisted suicide anymore. Yeah, I don't have my notes. Oh, wait a second. Here it is. Go ahead.
So I'm curious as far as that goes. So we had a discussion. We actually had a show on physician assisted suicide here.
I was on it.
I know, and I'm just wondering if that helped influence your part in it. Did we change your mind at all?
No, not at all. By
Darn
the
it.
way, it's not assisted suicide. Now it's medical aid in dying.
Medical. That's pretty.
Medical aid in dying.
That's
It's
pretty.
all.
So
It's not.
okay.
It's not the steak. It's the sizzle, right?
Well, it's you have to sell the solution.
You're making me
not the
hungry.
product, right? Okay, so let's get to it. So Stephen, you are self-proclaimed, as I am, a libertarian. I consider myself to be a small L libertarian. I don't stand for everything within the libertarian platform, but I don't think any Democrat stands for everything within the Democratic platform, or any Republican, except for maybe Tim, stands for everything within the Republican platform. And I say that
there's no way everyone can stand everything in the Republican platform, because it contradicts itself in most places, or in some places.
Okay, well, so we have that on wax. So Soder, the one takeaway from this: make sure when we cut this down, we chop it up so that everyone can see that Tim. Let the record show that Tim said that the Republican platform is completely inconsistent. That's what I heard anyway.
Say what again?
that the Republican platform is completely
I was multitasking
inconsistent
here. No, the Minnesota. I was being flippant. The Minnesota.
No. We're fine.
Platform.
You don't have to explain it. We got it.
No. I'm just saying. Have you ever read the platform in Minnesota? Because what happens is every 2 years they add on to it, and it's just, it's just one big mess that needs to be simplified. So I was being more flippant than anything else.
Well, it's okay. I think we just got the title for this show. So
Republicans are inconsistent. How is that any different from what people think now?
Says Tim Miller, though. We have to add the weight behind it. So, but no.
What weight I have?
So, but we agree. Well, heck, you have 30,000 people that voted for you. I've been voted for by no one. So, so you're a step ahead of me. But we agree on a lot of things. But I find, and I have found that that's what the show is all about. The show is about different ideas and different people coming together and being able to express those ideas and opinions in a way that we can learn from each other. We might, apart from this, being completely changed and renewed in our thinking, or we might part ways thinking, I don't know if I believe that guy. But I think that it would be silly for us not to at least have the discussion. So I'm not putting words in your mouth, Stephen. You do not agree with the wall, correct?
So no, I don't. So my biggest number, like I said this to you in the message, my number one big thing against the wall is if we ever needed to flee the country south to Mexico, which is obviously not a problem for me here in Alaska.
I don't know. You do have Canadians to worry about.
Yeah. Well, I have to. Anyway,
Stephen would probably flee back into Russia more than likely.
I would. You need his name.
I don't know what he said, but I want to know so bad.
Maybe I don't know his name. But I would. The funny thing that now is that right now Russia has sort of done a complete 180 from the Soviet Union regarding Christianity and religious freedoms. Putin, who was like a big KGB guy, has now got like photo ops of him going and praying in Orthodox churches, and now 70% of the Russians now say that they're Christians. So I think it's a lot of political theater there. But anyway, my big thing with the border wall is if we ever wanted to leave, to flee a tyrannical, oppressive country, then we wouldn't be able to. So I think freedom of movement and just freedom in general sort of go hand in hand. And speaking of economic freedom, within freedom of movement and economic freedom also go hand in hand. And I know the border wall is not like blocking any roads, um, like the big arguments that I hear about with the problem of people walking over from Mexico is that they don't want them to take part in our socialism because it bogs down our socialism. So in essence, the argument for the wall is to fight one form of big government, failing big government, that is our socialist sort of system, with another form of big government. And fighting fire with fire you're just going to burn the building down. So I think the solution is not to build a wall. I think the solution is to get rid of the socialism. That might be attracting a certain element of immigration, but I don't think that the I don't think the solution, or to maybe streamline how we process people legally into this country, to come in a lot faster. I think that a lot what we have with the arguments for the wall are often arguments that are based on service utilization within our welfare system.
So Tim, so would you not agree? And it's strange being on the same side of this, I think. But Tim and Stephen both, would you not agree that of all of the things that our government does, that we would probably all agree are overreach and stepping on our individual liberties? Would you guys not agree that a wall protecting our border would be within the confines of what we expect our government to do?
Yeah, securing our borders. So that's this conversation of whether we should restrict people coming over the border with use of a wall. It means a lot of things to a lot of different people, and it carries with it all sorts of baggage, especially political baggage. But to me, fundamentally, it's saying we're going to control our borders, and I'm supportive of that. And I know Nick I thought he was going to be on this. And I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
he
got
was
a
serious
message from
about
him
it.
about that. Apparently, he has destroyed his voice.
Okay. So, but anyway, so I'm not going to, I don't know where he was going, but basically from what I hear, the conversation is, as Christians, is this not immoral to be building a wall to hold people out? That's the way that I heard it. And that was a head scratcher for me because one thing, and I don't hold myself to have any deep, dark secrets of the state or government. I'm just around people that have a lot of times the information that just, it may be accessible to the public, but it's not clear and present right in front of them. And if we were to say, and everyone were to be saying in unison, that we're building a wall because we're keeping out drug traffickers, human traffickers, and the absolute most vile people of the world from coming in here and destroying our nation, everyone would say, yep, let's keep those people out. But there's the discussion of, well, what about families looking for a new life? They're coming here and we're locking up children and all these other things that have become part of the political equation on this. So yeah, if you look at me and you say, well, Tim, why do you want to keep a young family of 4 that just wants to get a good job and raise their kids and get education for their kids and improve their life? Why would you want to keep them out? It's probably because you're white and you don't like the color of their skin. Well, they've kind of won that argument, okay? But that's not the reason. The reason why I think there needs to be a wall is not to keep everyone out, but to be able to govern who comes in and who doesn't come in. And right now we have a very porous border to where we have people coming in ways that are flaunting the system. Now, one of the reasons why we have this argument and we're allowing to have a porous border that people can come in that can flaunt the system, because there's people on this side that want that, not because of the drugs, not because of the human trafficking. They want it because it's cheap labor. And by the way, they really don't want them properly documented, because properly documented people have a voice. And they don't want those people to have a voice. They want them to be subjected to underclass status with poor pay. Okay? This is a very dark, seedy side of this. The very people that are standing up and saying, you should allow these people in, and why are you so worried about documenting these people, are the people that don't want them documented because they need them for cheap labor. It's sickening. It's absolutely detestable what some people are doing on this subject. So there again, if we build a wall, we, in theory, I'm not saying the wall can't be flaunted, but we'll use the metaphor that the wall will control flow in and out of the United States. We're going to know who's coming in. If we know who's coming in, let's make sure that we get that young family of 4 that wants to build a better life for them and their kids and wants to come here and work hard and become citizens of the United States. Let them come in and do the work that they want to do. But those awful people that want to come in, shut them out and keep them out. The awful people that are here now, get them out of here and make sure they don't come back in. That's the conversation that people down there are having. We're up here comfy up in Minnesota talking about this issue in a philosophical sense of whether we should care about people or not. And that's not the reality of what's going on down there by multiple accounts of people that have told me. I know people that are in U.S. Congress that have told me stories of what's really happening down there. I've had media people down there saying what's really happening down there. If people heard these stories, we would be much more unified on how to address this. But why do we not want to address it? Number one, mostly because it isn't politically salient to be able to do that. People have to have winners and losers in this politically, and the truth has a habit of getting in the way of winning a political argument, because truth always wins. Truth always wins.
Oh, don't we wish?
No, truth wins when it comes out. It just isn't always there. That's what I mean.
It's, unless it's committed suicide in a suicide prevention cell.
Yeah, the truth was not coming out in that, though. That's my point.
And if the truth all came out, then we would have found more when we stormed the
Area
base
51?
over there in Area 51. Yeah, so
Did they
truth didn't come
finally
out on that.
storm that?
No, we weren't allowed to.
It's the 20th.
Did you go out there?
No, I did not.
You don't want to say, do you? There's people watching.
No, I disavow that movement. So, but you don't believe that clearly, that the truth always wins. So, Stephen, where do you fall on that? He says the truth always wins. You say that we wish. So, do you not believe that the truth always wins?
Well, even Jesus said that unless he has shortened the end of days, no flesh would survive. So he said that in Matthew 23 or 24. So, I think that human beings have a tendency to love lies more than truth. The Bible says that men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil. So I don't think that I think the reason why the truth doesn't always win is because of man's nature.
And I agree with that. My point, the point that I was making, and I know I made an absolute statement about the word truth, and it was uncomfortable. But my point being is that when you are in a room trying to make decisions, when the truth is clear and present and sitting there and cannot be denied, I've never seen it lose. I've never seen it. Now, people can obfuscate the truth. They can throw up, cause you to question what the truth is and that sort of stuff. I'm just saying, when you have truth, when you have very true moments, it moves the room. And I believe that when I say truth, that's with a capital T. I don't want to get
sure, and a good example of why that may not always be consistent is we have good absolute documentation that the Holocaust really, really happened, and yet you have large portions of this world, which seems crazy to Americans, but large portions of this world is like, no, that was just a hoax. So when I say the truth, when you say the truth always wins, when it's presented right there, I would say people tend to love lies more than the truth.
I agree with you on that, and I don't want to get bogged down in this because I know that I said something that was sort of provocative to the point that we need to talk about it.
I think that speaks well of you and your peers, though, in represented office. Though, if you feel like that they are very, that they're very, committed to the truth, and that that you feel that if the truth is presented there in those wherever you make laws, that I think that speaks well of you and your colleagues.
Well, don't think too well of all the colleagues, because there's people that know the truth and still do what it is that they want to do.
All I can hope is that when you guys are presented with the truth about gun control, that you guys vote to oppose it. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about, though. But we're here to talk about the wall. We can have that discussion another time, and I think you're pretty passionate about that too, Stephen, from what I've seen. But so with that being said, so what is your solution to it, Stephen? If you believe that you do not like the idea of the government building a wall, but it sounds like your argument is actually more selfish, and that's not a knock against you, but it sounds like your argument against the wall has more to do with our accessibility to Mexico than it does with the refugees, and I hate calling them that, but the people fleeing oppression. It seems as though your argument has more to do with our being able to get access there, as opposed to them being able to have access here.
That's so kind of like my family does have a little bit of a history with illegal immigration. My great grandfather came to this country during the Chinese Exclusion Act from Hong Kong. So he was an illegal immigrant, but he didn't come over the Rio Grande. And he paid taxes, and he never went to jail. He didn't come here to live off of people's charity. He came here to really build a life for himself, and he ended up running a restaurant in Chicago. So it's not a so when I think about illegal immigration, I think about how my own family got here. Immigration from Mexico is more of a philosophical thing. I agree, especially for someone in Alaska. My stepfather came from Cuba right after the revolution there, and he was a refugee from Cuba, and he was naturalized as a citizen. But for a long time, I remember when the Republican Party back in the early '90s was very pro taking in refugees from everywhere, and there was that big controversy with Elian Gonzalez. I don't know if you remember that, Tim. And the Republican Party was so pro keeping Elian Gonzalez in, who floated on a boat from Cuba to try to be with one of his parents here in Florida, here in America.
His mother.
Huh? His
mother.
Okay, yeah, and it seemed like that at some point from then to now, like there's been like maybe a shift in philosophy among the Republican Party, and it's as someone who's a bit of an outsider now, but I wasn't always an outsider to the Republican Party. It's very interesting to see that sort of shift. You talk about the immigrants coming here and being taken advantage of for cheap wages. Well, as a libertarian, I would say minimum wage is a socialist construct, and that we should get rid of it anyway. If people want to negotiate for whatever wage they want, they if they are voluntarily employed at whatever wage they want, that's between them and their employer. So if you think about it, economically, if Tyson Chicken wants to hire people for a certain wage, and there is a populace who's willing to work that wage, then why is that a problem?
I don't disagree with that statement, but that's with a lot of assumptions in place. So when you have someone who is an illegal immigrant, meaning they don't have the proper documents and they're working at Tyson Chicken, they're also breaking the law because they have a fake social security number. on and on and on again. You know,
And,
Tyson,
and to pay income tax under that fake Social Security number, so they're paying taxes too.
and they're not receiving any of the return on that because they don't legally have it. So what's happening with that class of people is as if they have no power or voice to negotiate, because if they negotiate, they get found out. Or there's, you know, one of the really strong liberal Democrat issues right now is wage theft, they call it. And one of the things that progressives are doing is they touch on a truth and then they just expand it to all sorts of things that aren't true. Okay. But the reality is there's some illegal immigrants that they aren't paid by their employer what they were told they were going to be paid. They have no recourse to address that. Okay. There is certain bargaining powers that they lose. Now, the point that I was trying to make earlier is in that dynamic, that employer is at an advantage, and they're going to want to keep that advantage. And I'm not saying every single employer that has undocumented workers, okay, people that aren't supposed to be there, that their intent is to hold them down and use them, okay? But there are people that do. And there are also, quite frankly, one of the difficulties we have in the United States is we have almost full employment. So you can find help wanted signs everywhere, right? You can find them everywhere. So there's an eagerness to find someone that wants to work to make sure they work. Well, when you have, you know, a lousy job dealing with the processing of meat in an animal factory, there's not a lot of people that want that. So if someone steps forward, you're going to be motivated to make sure that that person is employed. And so these dynamics all kind of layer on themselves. And my only point earlier is if you have someone who's properly documented, someone who is everything that we aspire to be, you know, in the true American way of working hard, you know, generationally, you know, our next generation doing a little bit better than the previous generation, all that sort of stuff, that dynamic on someone who is an illegal immigrant here, they don't have that. And I don't think the system really has a fundamental problem with that either. We say we do, but we don't.
But I think you really hit the nail on the head there. They don't have any voice or any power, but a lot of it is but you're still looking to fight. And this might be like a philosophical conflict between Republicans and Libertarians, but you're still looking to fight big government with big government instead of taking away laws that limit their power. You're looking to add more layers onto the government instead of taking off layers that are restricting those voices.
And that's a fair criticism, because when you're a legislator, what is it that you want to do? You want to write bills. Well, you don't write bills. You might take away some law, but it's to change it with, you know, what you think is better. So there's a natural tendency, but that doesn't mean all of us are always like that. I fundamentally think that we have overregulated things. And I always tell people bad policy is not made better with more bad policy. So I actually lean on the side that you guys are talking about.
Ultimately comes to is bad policy being overlaid with more bad policy.
That's right. And that's not good. And that's what happens. But what is also going on, understand, there are people, and unfortunately in government, there's a lot of people, the majority of people believe that government is there to fix things and help people.
But let me back up and say this though. So I'm going to play the devil's advocate real quick, and I'm going to whip out the African American Express,
Oh,
sure.
also known as the black card. No, seriously.
glad it's hard.
This is where I get off the boat, though. Where I get off the boat with the Republican side with this law and order mantra, right, is that there have been a lot of immoral, evil laws that have been put in place that have affected people. That were laws, yes, they were laws, and people were breaking those laws, but they were completely unjust, right? Harriet Tubman and the Quakers that helped establish the Underground Railroad were breaking the law. The people who, have to remember Jim Crow. Those were the laws those were laws in the South, right? So you had these people who were breaking laws, and I guarantee you, if tomorrow there is a Beto O'Rourke becomes president of the United States, and there is a gun buyback, a mandatory gun buyback, there will be a lot of people who are conservatives that are going to break the law. They are not going to turn their weapons in, right? So there have been many times in history where there have been laws made that people have been conscientiously objective of, or objective to. So where I have to get off the boat in the argument of, well, those people are breaking the law by coming in here. If you strongly and honestly believe that those laws are unjust, then you're not going to adhere to those laws. Just like if there was a law that we felt was unjust, we would not agree with. So I believe that argument in and of itself is a weak one. Even though I agree with you, Tim, that we have to have laws. But at the same time, there have been many times in our country's history where laws have been made that were completely unjust and wrong. So sorry, go ahead and continue, Stephen.
Well, I think Tim made an interesting point about the function, how government elected officials function, and maybe he's an exception, and I'm not, I don't want to, pin this to you as a direct criticism to you, because I really don't know much about the inner workings of the Minnesota government. But you say that legislators want to pass laws and not like take away laws. Well, that just sounds like a dysfunctional government to me. It sounds.
No, absolutely. I don't just. That is one of the fundamental problems that we have right now. You fix a problem in government by adding a layer of government. That's a problem.
We both
maybe a good example would be. Maybe a good example would be.
One of the things that surprise people is that I'm an elected person, but I have no problem. Like, and these two guys have seen me do this. I give a peek inside the system in a way that, I don't have a problem showing where the fundamental issues are. And this is one of them. And I'm sure that you could point out my hypocrisy where you said, well, you tried to write this bill and all that does is add a layer of government, right? If you go to my webpage on the Minnesota House of Representatives, as all the bills that I've authored and co-authored, you'd probably get a sick stomach from, especially some of them that I've co-authored. But here's before we go too far down this road, I do want to make, since I kind of laid the system out before us, another thing, I said before that when you're in government, you have to govern. Therefore, you have to get things done, right? You can't just be there to shut things down. People that elected me did not elect me to shut things down.
Well, speak for your other constituents.
Well, this is an important point that I make to people. So I have a lot of students that come through my office. I like that. It could be grade schoolers, high schoolers, college. I spend a lot of time. I feel like that's my investment into the next generation of people that are going to push me out. And a lot of times they'll ask the question around, what's the most important thing to know about how government works, or what you do? What do you think is most important for you when dealing with governmental things? However you want to phrase it, I always go back to the same thing. The legislature is all about relationships, all about it. Good relationships, bad relationships, trustful relationships, relationships where you don't trust someone, integrity in relationships, apologizing when you make a mistake, all these good, Judeo-Christian principles on what makes healthy relationships. And so the reason why I say that, and then I give some examples to give some contrast to make points. There's State Representative Ray Dean, who's as liberal as I am Democrat. He lives in North Minneapolis. When he was running for Minneapolis mayor, he wanted to take guns out of the hands of the police officers in Minneapolis. Okay? So he's kind of in a different place than I am. But he has consistently, even in our disagreements, showed respect to me and integrity in what he has said. Okay? He's never played the game. So although on the issues we will disagree almost every time, there's a couple issues where we agreed this year. It was shocking, okay? But on almost everything we'll disagree. he and I can have healthy conversations about things, and people should be happy. That's when people say learn to work with the other side. That's what you do. Now, let me give you contrast of, I won't name a name because this will get me in trouble, Quentin, Q. Um, uh, um, there's a Republican that I don't trust any further than I can throw him. Okay. Now, on issues, we probably agree, not on everything, but I think it's probably fair to say that we might agree on 60 to 75% of the issues. We agree. But I don't work well with him because I don't trust him. So between those two examples, there's lots of iterations in between, right? But in the end, I'm one of 134 state representatives. There's 67 senators, and then there's a governor. And between those 202 people, we have to do things we have to accomplish something because the state of Minnesota elected us. The people of the state of Minnesota elected us to get a budget passed or to, address the tough issues of the day and make a decision on that, all that sort of stuff. And so I kind of rambled a little bit, but I want to make sure that people understand that when I come from my perspective of in office, because of that relationship building, just saying we're going to shut it down and turn off the lights, that's just not going to be who I am.
Soder, I wonder if we could pass around a petition to pay the legislators to not show up.
But here's the thing. I had a woman at an event last week that basically came to me and Senator Lang, your senator, our senator in this district, and her and her husband basically said that, why do you guys pass anything? Just vote no. Sounds good. That's a good libertarian message right now. Just vote no. Okay. So let's say we vote, and on his side, he only has a 2-vote majority to pass things. So he literally could shut down government. Him and one other person now it would take, but he could shut it down. Okay. I can tell you it doesn't work that way. Okay. Let's say that he says no, and let's say nothing gets passed and we go into shutdown, which would be not the likely direction, because if he votes no, then they start compromising with Democrats. You can get even worse bills than what you're even seeing now. But let's say that it shuts it down, okay? So July 1st, there is no budget in the state of Minnesota, okay? How long will that feel good for you, okay? We now have no national, I'm going to go to the easy ones first. We now have no National Guard. We now have no state troopers.
Okay.
We now have
Soder and I are waiting for you to get to the bad part.
We have people that are of diminished capacity. What's that?
We're all sitting here waiting for the bad part.
So you guys literally want chaos in society. Because I'm giving you the simple one.
I happen to trust my fellow man enough that I'd say let's give him a shot. I think that people, because the foundation of our republic was self-governance, the ability for us to self-govern.
That's not true. That's not true.
No, it is true. It is not true. We hold these
from the very beginning. We had state governments.
We did have a government, but the government was a nth of the size that it is today. And our founding fathers, that was the experiment. The experiment was for us to be able to govern ourselves for the most part. I do understand that at some points, many of us have to, we as a nation have to be willing to give up some of our freedoms in order to be governed. I get that. But to the point that we are today,
I agree with you with that.
No. I don't think you do, because you're arguing with me. You're arguing. No. Not to the degree that I want to be governed less. To the degree that I want to be governed less, the budget would be cut by 75%.
When's the last time that you filled your vehicle with gas? What day this week?
Yesterday.
You shut down government, you're not filling that tank with gas within a couple weeks. I'm not saying that's right. I'm telling you that's a reality. I can give you plenty of examples of that. Okay. And those are kind of big, bold statements, but there's a lot of more esoteric things that you would have to realize. Our economy would collapse in the state of Minnesota.
There are a lot of very, very smart, intelligent people. I would consider myself to be one of them. That we would figure it out. That if the government were shut down, we would figure out a way to survive without them. Because I believe in the exceptionalism of the American people. But
as long as you had more ammunition and a better shot, because that's what it would come to.
Well, you know what?
And I think there's more and more. By the way, I'm one of those people that say that I believe that a civil war is coming. I don't think it's going to look like the last one, but I think armed conflict is coming to the United States. I don't know when, but I believe it's coming. And it's because of comments like what you're saying. People are eventually you're going to win that argument eventually. And then it's going to happen.
Yeah. I would hope that we would find a more diplomatic response to it, but I fear that
we're doing the more diplomatic response.
But this is not what we came to talk about, but we just got on this rabbit trail. Personally, I don't think that people have the stomach for it, to be really brutally honest with you. Man, to just think about, just going back to the Declaration of Independence and all that these men were willing to give up, understanding that they were taking a chance on an experiment that could completely flop. They had no idea whether or not it was going to work, whether or not it was not going to work. But for them to essentially say, I'm willing to put everything I own and bet it all on this republic. I don't know that people are willing to make that ultimate sacrifice, because that was really and truly the ultimate sacrifice. The ultimate sacrifice was being willing to put everything you owned, everything you'd worked for, everything you had, and be able to bet that on the republic, and the ability to overthrow a tyrannical government. The odds were severely stacked against them. And I just don't, I'm sorry, I don't believe that people are especially as comfortable as we've become. I think was it not Macbeth, was it Hamlet that said it best? To take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing in them. But in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, right? If we were to come to that point, exactly what would be the outcome? And if we were to come to that point, what if we fail? I think that would be the one deterrent for most people, is what if you fail? What would you be left with at that point? Is it better to deal with the devil you know or the devil you don't? Now, at what point people come to the place where that scale is turned, I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't think you can either. But I hope that we don't. I hope that we can turn it around. But getting back to the wall, the reason why I'm so passionate about this idea is because of you, Tim. Because most people that watch this show don't realize how much work that you've done to curb human trafficking in the state of Minnesota. It's a big issue here in the state of Minnesota, and in many states, I'm sure. But in the one I live in, it's a major issue. And I think that in order to be serious about cutting down on human trafficking and ultimately stopping human trafficking, I think a wall is imminent. I think it's necessary as a result of that. Speak on that, Tim, because you know more about this issue of human trafficking than anyone. And do you feel that it's possible to bring to a halt without a wall?
Well, no, because as long as there's a demand, there's going to be a supply, and that's the problem. And a lot of the human trafficking happening here in the United States, in Minnesota specifically, is white Minnesota girls and boys. So that's not going to end when you build a wall. But what is happening is there is lots of trafficking of humans and trafficking of drugs coming over the border. That's a real big problem. So I know I didn't really answer it that way. What happens in trafficking in Minnesota? You kind of raise what Minnesota is like, and we're a state that has it. I don't know where we rank, because we always like to rank the states, but we are worse than many others. A lot of people believe that's a combination of things. We have a lot of blue collar labor in agriculture and in manufacturing, the railroad system. Another big thing is the Bakken oil fields. That's a bunch of male labor that's out there. And then we have the interstate system here that's pretty readily available. We have the Mall of America where a lot of these kids are recruited. You have just some of the social service laws here in the state of Minnesota give a great deal of anonymity to that sort of person, and so the pimps kind of exploit some of the rules that are there with our law enforcement, with our social services. Now, the good news is in the state of Minnesota, I won't go far down this road, but I don't want to paint a totally bleak picture here. Is Minnesota has a bad problem with trafficking, but we also have laws that are among the best, especially when it comes to trafficking of children. So, but I will tell you that when it comes to building the wall, because that's the subject that we're on, the people that are in the know that say we need to remember, a wall is not to shut everyone out. The wall is to be able to control and know who is coming in and who is not. And I can tell you that a wall will go a long way to keeping the trafficking of drugs and the trafficking of humans out from our southern border. Now, the reason why we talk about our border to the south is because our relationship with Canada to the north is a completely different dynamic. And on east and west coast, we have oceans. So this is all about flowing through from the south, okay? This is not a racist issue, okay? You will hear racist people say racist things about the border and about controlling illegal immigration. That doesn't mean that's what the policy is about. You just have knuckleheads that have to give their 2 cents. And then the people that want to stop this flow through there, they can just bring up those knuckleheads into the picture and say, look, this is a bunch of racist people that don't want the border to be open. So now, like with the liberals, the reason why they want the flow through there is a built constituency. That's all that it is for the progressive movement, is we have more people that can vote for us in order for us to accomplish the things that we want to do. It's not more complicated than that. For the Republican side, who, by the way, is just as guilty as the Democrat side on the border policies, it's about that cheap labor that I was talking about. And I'm kind of simplifying because it's a little bit more dynamic than that, but those are our fundamental problems that we have. So the reason why we aren't building a wall is not because there isn't the right reasons to do it. It's because there's political factors that are keeping it from happening on both sides. I'll finish with this because I'm going a little bit too long for my turn. But we talk about the wall, but what we really are talking about and should be keeping our focus on is good immigration policy. And the wall is hopefully going to be part of that. But I can tell you the United States for the last 50 years has had terrible immigration policy, especially the last 20 or 30. And both sides are guilty in this. They're complicit in this. We have bad policy right now. This is a policy issue that we can actually change things and make good policy, but we have to have people that know what the truth is and the wherewithal to do something about the truth, make those changes.
Well, I feel like I'm directly in the middle of you two, but I'm leaning slightly, I guess, to your side solely because of the fact that I do agree with the idea of a wall. But you know where I stand on the drug thing. I think that it should all be legalized, and that would immediately do away with the issue of illegal drugs coming in.
Well, why?
Why what?
Why would it do with illegal? In Colorado, the illegal marijuana sales are larger than they were before legalized pot.
Right, because it's still illegal in the states around it. So make all drugs legal
because it's cheaper
throughout the. No, well then make it legal throughout everywhere, and the reason why it's cheaper is because the government is taxing it at 65%. So
that's right.
Okay, so again, the government is the problem.
But if all 50 states legalize marijuana, all 50 states are going to tax it and regulate it. Okay? So the illegal market is still going to be there because it's cheaper, and it's even easier now for the illegal market because if I have a bag of marijuana in my hand, you don't know where I bought it from.
So what you're saying, Tim, is that the government is creating the black market by overtaxing the legitimate market.
Sounds kind of like the problem alcohol had.
Sure. Yeah, no, you probably there's probably a point there, but you can talk about, well, then we should pass laws that don't tax marijuana. You're never going to see that because the people that are in power that want to legalize marijuana want to do it for two things, for votes and for taxes. Those are the two, and then ultimately control, because those are the people that want to control you through government. It's
Well-
really ironic. I'm reaching a moment here that I'm having this like watershed moment where the libertarians are really kind of the ones that are spearheading legalized marijuana. I think that's a fair statement, right? But what the libertarians are ushering in is way more control, way more taxes, and way more government as soon as it's all legalized. That's fantastic. That's wild.
That's because we have to compromise with the other parties. But
that's the only way we can sell it to the Republicans is saying, "Hey, it's going to be additional tax revenue."
No, here's where you have Republicans totally wrong. We're complicit in tax increases, but because we compromise and we fail at our job. But I don't know a single Republican that wants an increase in taxes. I don't know a single one in the Minnesota legislature.
The next
Not
takeaway
one.
from this video, Tim speaks for all Republicans. All right, fantastic.
And on this show, I do. I have to. But I'm telling you that when you talk about tax increases, you were talking about the Democrats. When you were talking about more government, you were talking about the Democrats. Now, Republicans have many examples of being complicit in this for whatever reasons, but I'm telling you, the driving boat on all of that. And so what the libertarians are driving this to legalize marijuana in all the states, I am telling you, it's coming with more regulations and more taxes, and more control of your lives.
So
guaranteed.
First of all, I'm not for the more regulations part of it. Okay,
but you're going to get it.
I'm not for that. And again, let's remember we're talking about the wall here. But I think if you're going to make an argument for the wall, I think you can make a much stronger argument for the wall by simply everyone understanding that if they can get 20 kilos of cocaine in the country, or 200 kilos, I think I saw the other day, if they can get that within the country, and they can get Lolita and her family in the country, and I'm not trying to be racist, I'm just saying, then who's to stop them from bringing ISIS terrorists into the country? So I do agree that we need to have an idea. The only way we can maintain our sovereignty is by having a hard border. Okay, I agree with you on that. This argument about drugs, that just sounds like a convenient way to build up a prison system. I'm getting really sick of this argument.
Oh, we've built
a prison system. We've built a huge business in privatized prisons, and I would say 80% of the people within those prisons are there because they decided to supply a service to people that people wanted, not that they didn't want, not that they forced drugs down people's throat, but people wanted something, they supplied it for them, and they went to prison as a result of it. So once again, I disagree with the whole drug trafficking thing, but I can agree with you that we need to know who is coming into our nation for national security's sake.
Yeah, if you think the people that wanted to make drugs illegal did it so that we could expand the prison system, then you sound like my most liberal friends in the Minnesota House.
I'm just stating the facts. I'm stating the facts.
That's not a fact. It's not
okay.
True.
No. Seriously, you create a law. You say if you do this, we're going to put you in prison.
Yeah,
right?
you are gonna increase the prison population. I don't disagree.
Okay, so if you wanted to cut down the amount of people in prison, just do away with the law.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do away with murder. We'll get rid of more people. Let's just make everything legal.
Now that's where we get to a fundamental libertarian principle. Okay, I am for individual liberty completely across the board until your individual liberty steps on my individual liberty.
Do you
I have an individual liberty? No, I have an individual liberty to live and to live safely. That is my individual liberty. You attempting to take away that liberty from me is wrong and should be punished, and that's when the government should get involved.
Okay, well, let me ask you
deciding
this.
that I want to eat some mushrooms has absolutely nothing to do with you or the government. That is me making a decision that I want to put that in my body.
How many people do you think in the Minnesota prison system, the state prison system right now, are
I don't
there
do
because-
mushrooms, by the way. I just want to make
No,
sure
hold on.
we're clear on that.
How many people are in the Minnesota prison system right now only, and I emphasize the word only, because they were smoking dope, eating mushrooms, snorting cocaine, smoking crystal meth? Add the list, taking heroin. How many people are in the Minnesota state prison system right now because of doing that? I can tell you the answer. I know the number from the top of my head. It's an easy number to remember. It's 0. Okay? The people that are in prison in the state of Minnesota that have to do with drugs,
They were selling it.
no, it wasn't just selling it. How many people are in the prison system that were just selling it? There
Well,
might be 1 or 2. Okay, the people
One or
that
two,
are
whoa. So
the
you're telling
people
me that
people
God,
that are
where is
related-
Nick when you need him? So
the
you're
people that
telling
are
me that
related
there's
to
only
drugs-
1 or 2 people in jail in
Yes.
Minnesota for selling drugs.
Yes. Yes,
I
selling
know
drugs
5
alone.
of them personally.
Selling drugs alone, because here's what happens. Okay, when you go in and you have a case, they plead down to intent to distribute for a shorter sentence, but that person probably pointed a gun at someone's head, and that's why they pled down to just 6 months in the state prison. Okay, you could find a case where you find this, but if it was someone that was strictly selling, you're talking about a very high level sales. You're not talking about someone that's selling on a street corner, not in the state of Minnesota, because if you sell on a street corner, you can do it 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and you might not even be in a county jail. How do I know that? Because I know people that have done that, and they've barely spent time in a county jail. To get into the state of Minnesota prison system, you have to have layer upon layer of things. Now, your rap sheet may sound strong, because one of the things that's happening right now as well, nonviolent offenders shouldn't be in state prison. Okay, I'll agree with that. You might give me some examples where I squirm a little bit, but you could probably prove that to me. But those people that you point out there, we always find out every single time that they have a lot more that's going with that. It's just that when the official court document, they pled down to a lesser charge, because if you plead guilty, that saves the courts a lot of time and a lot of money. And so we administratively process a lot of things. So are there a lot of administratively processed people in our state prison system? You bet. But don't tell me that they haven't hurt other people along the way. Even that person who is selling that dope to someone that they're hurting, because their life is being destroyed by that dope. So don't tell me that
But they are an
hurting.
adult and they are making a decision.
I'm really.
But if I interject a little bit in this,
Please.
course,
by all means.
Just no.
so
I just found it interesting that Tim seems maybe not Tim, but seems boomers are surprised that there can be guns and violence in an industry that's illegal. And that's the reason that it should be illegal, is because there's violence in an illegal
Only
thing.
based on your definition. Only based on your definition.
As they sit around and sip their beers.
But
You guys live in
they're now legal beers.
You guys
because
live in a utopia if you think that if every drug was legal, that there wouldn't be bad things that would happen to people.
How many people
You sound like the
because of
people.
alcohol
You
these
sound
days?
like, you
because
sound
they
like
buy
a
it?
prohibitionist is what you sound like.
Like what you're arguing is that there's violence in this industry of drugs, and there's violence in this industry of drugs because it's an illegal act that can ruin a person's life financially and by sending them to prison. So if you can't trust someone you're working with to squeal to the cops, of course you're going to resort to violence. I don't know of anyone who just wanting to pay for alcohol is pointing a gun at the clerk, because it's a legal activity that I can do. I just went and bought beer and some Canadian whiskey earlier today. A year ago, that would have been illegal to do in Minnesota. And now I can just go buy it. I don't need to point a gun at anyone. If someone is buying drugs if they're legal, they're not going to be pointing guns because there's no reason to, because they don't have to trust the other person is not an informant and wanting to ruin their life just to get off on another sentence. So it kind of becomes a circular thing here. Yes, there's guns involved in
marijuana is going to be legal in Minnesota within a couple of years, unless just crazy things happen. It's going to be legal probably everywhere, but it's going to be legal here in Minnesota. I can't wait to have this conversation about a year or two into that. I can't wait.
Well, even if it's legal in Minnesota, we still have the feds to worry about.
No, because I think within 5 years it'll be legal at the either flat out legal at the federal level, or it'll be just basically so diminished that it'll, for all practical purposes, will be made legal. There's too much money involved. It's going to be
parallels?
10 years for sure. We're going to have basically access to marijuana. Okay.
Okay. So this is all hearsay. Steven, marijuana is now legal recreationally in Alaska, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What have you seen, just objectively speaking?
So I feel like this is an area where I can speak about with a lot more authority than on the border wall, because this is actually sort of my passion. Not the wall is sort of my hobby.
That's great. That's a bumper sticker.
Drugs are my passion. The wall is my hobby.
I've been in recovery myself for about 20 years, and I've been working with addicts or as a substance abuse counselor for about 10 years. I'm a state certified substance abuse counselor in the state of Alaska. I work in a residential facility. I don't work as a counselor at the moment. I actually process records at the moment, but so I work administratively right now. So this is sort of where I feel like that this is drugs are my passion. Where we have seen the legalization of marijuana. We have I remember when marijuana was illegal. I remember buying back when I was using marijuana. I don't use marijuana now that it's legal, but I used marijuana back when it's illegal. And I do remember having a gun pointed at my head and told if I ever said where I got the stuff, that, and by the way, the guy who did that is a youth pastor now. But that I would be shot, and that was because there was so much. You had to really. It was such a trust. You had to really trust the person you were getting stuff from, and a lot of times that trust was enforced at gunpoint. But a lot of the violence in the whole marijuana industry is completely gone. Everyone gets it legally now. I know I work in a residential facility, and I talk to the guys. No one buys their pot illegally. And I know and Minnesota might be different, but I know a lot of people in the state of Alaska who are in jail for only drug-related offenses, non-violent drug-related offenses. So, and I can't speak on Minnesota, obviously, and how their system works, but that's definitely a thing for Alaska. So, and legalization for marijuana has greatly reduced the stigma around it. People are able to seek treatment more easily. Before, the big problem with seeking treatment for people who are having trouble stopping using marijuana was because they didn't want the cops to find out about it, because they didn't want additional legal charges on top of all the other stresses that addiction brings into a person's life. So I can tell you that legalization for marijuana has brought about a lot more people seeking treatment, and it has greatly reduced the sort of violent culture around marijuana use. It's totally gone. So that, and I think that government illegalization of things that were previously legal has created the black market for it. I definitely am do hold to that libertarian idea that what a person ingests into their own body is their own business. So that's kind of where I am with that. With the wall, how that relates to the wall. Most of the fentanyl problem we're having with right now, that's like the big problem. The thing we've identified as the biggest problem right now. Most of that's coming from Southeast Asia. That's not coming across the wall. It's coming on boats. So I don't think that the wall and drugs are even going. I don't think the wall is going to phase drug trafficking at all. All the cocaine that we have in Fairbanks, it comes from Central America, but people don't walk it up here. We've got a big coke problem up here. People cook their own meth here, so that's domestic. But the cocaine we have here, someone flies that on an airplane up here. No one walks that up across Canada. So I don't know that the wall is going to really do anything with drug trafficking. Human trafficking, maybe. I can't really speak on that with any authority, but so I don't, regarding the wall, which is our original topic, I don't know that that's really going to stop drug trafficking or slow it down even.
Well, see, Tim, I brought in an expert witness and didn't even know it. Look at there. Because Tim's argument was that if we legalized marijuana, we would see a huge spike in traffic accidents and people would die.
I didn't say that. I said there would be an increase, not a huge dramatic increase.
Well, if it's a small increase,
your whole point is if I want to smoke pot, I don't hurt anyone, and when I went on my tirade is that you're hurting people. If Soder started smoking pot now because it's legal, it's going to affect his wife and kids. You can't tell me that it's not. Okay. We could have a long argument about where the government needs to have.
You're assuming a lot. The same logic that you're using for that is the same logic that the Democrats are using right now to outlaw guns. You are attributing
the same logic people used to pass the 19th Amendment, which fueled the crime in Chicago and increased the mob exponentially.
I think the only argument, there's two arguments, and one is more ridiculous. One argument is more ridiculous than the other. The first argument is that that marijuana is no more dangerous than drinking a glass of wine, and the only dumber argument is that marijuana is less dangerous than drinking a glass of wine. It's just physics. It's just not true.
No. Let's get back.
It's also worse than drinking a glass of wine. Drinking half a bottle of booze in one sitting.
I think what's true is that problematic alcohol use and problematic marijuana use. That problematic alcohol use is more dangerous than problematic marijuana use, because both can be imbibed responsibly. Both can be abused. I think to equate one glass of wine to one, bowl of marijuana, I don't think that's to say one is more or less dangerous. I think they're both rather innocuous myself. I definitely, just from what I've observed, would say that alcoholics tend to be more violent than people who are having trouble just with marijuana.
But again, let's back up to this idea of that Tim is raising, and I love you, buddy, but it's still important to bring this up because we drew a lot of comparisons to the modern day Republican Party and the modern day Democratic Party, and I think this is one of those issues where we can draw a strong comparison because you made the statement that it would affect his family if Soder, his wife and kids, would affect them if he started to smoke marijuana.
You know what the really funny part about that is? My wife has said, if it becomes legal, I would like to try it. I don't care. That's the really funny part to me.
but the interesting part to me is that you are attributing an action to an otherwise completely responsible and completely um, uh, a good person. So you are assuming a lot of things about his usage and his inability to govern himself. I think anything done in excess is a problem, right? I mean, with that being said, I feel that if the government ever completely takes over our healthcare, watch them start to regulate foods that we eat and the types of foods that we
Already
can eat,
doing that.
right? So,
Yep.
I mean, so where does it end? Now we're saying that this guy sitting, which pot was legal for a very long time. Hemp was legal for a very long time in this country, and people were, for the most part, very safe and very they did what they did in their own homes for the most part and didn't hurt anybody. But now we're saying that, well, if he does that, it's going to affect his family. Well, first off, it's not the government's responsibility to necessarily protect Soder's family from something that has not even happened yet, right? That's where I start to get into the weeds, is when the government looks to stop people from doing things that they have not done. That's the whole argument behind the red flag law.
You said that if it doesn't hurt anyone else, then we should just be left alone to do whatever we want. So
I
the
said if
opposite
it
would
does,
be true.
I said if it does not step on, if it does not infringe upon someone else's individual liberty, that they
Okay.
should be allowed to do it.
Okay.
Him ingesting a substance into his own body does not infringe upon his family's
Okay,
individual
so
liberty.
here's one thing that I want with this. I want written in the bill also. That person, from as soon as they're documented as having smoked a joint, okay, to all the way to starting their own business around it, they are no longer qualified for any social services. How about that?
Amen to that. How about where do I decide?
Oh my
But
gosh.
you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that.
I know.
You're going to get legal. You're going to get legalized pot, but you're not going to have. You're not going to have any adjustment to social services. It'll probably just
There's
grow.
the rub.
Actually.
There's the rub, because we could end the argument about the wall, and we could end the argument about the legalization of drugs if we simply did away with the with our socialist system. If we did away with all government entitlement programs, if we did away with all those, we wouldn't have nearly as many people trying to sneak into the country. And number two, we wouldn't have nearly the problem that we're having, because I mean, you look at Canada. I was in Canada hunting, what was it, 2 years ago. A carton of cigarettes, which I don't smoke, but I was with a person who did. A carton of cigarettes was $19. $19 for a single carton of cigarettes. Why? Well, because the government assumed the role of taking care of people's health care. So they felt like if you were going to smoke, you were going to pay severely for that right to do that, especially if they were fitting the bill for your health issues.
That's actually fair, though. That's fair.
Huh?
$19?
$19 for a carton of cigarettes.
A carton of Marlboros is $82 up here.
No. I'm not a carton, a pack of cigarettes. A pack of cigarettes. Yeah, sorry, I don't smoke. Yeah, but a pack of cigarettes. So what's in a pack of 20? I guess, is that 20? Yeah. Okay, so almost $1 a cigarette is what it costs. So that's what you're gonna pay for the right to smoke, because you
go to Canada for cigarettes.
It's been going for 102 minutes with no audio. Bullcrap. It hasn't been going that long with no audio because people have been responding to what we've been saying in the stream. So,
any good comments?
huh?
Any good comments?
Yeah, it says we got it. It's back. Okay.
Hey, we're back.
Okay. All right, we're back. We're back live. All right. So, because there is a little bit of a delay. All right. So the question is, if you ban all social programs, what about those who legitimately need them?
Well, here's something Jesus said. Jesus said, "The poor you have with you always." So you're never going to completely solve poverty. You're never going to completely solve homelessness. The only society that ever came really close to solving all homelessness was Soviet Russia, where if you were homeless, they put you in prison or a gulag. So, and then you're a productive member of society, right? You're working for the last year of your life. So you're never going to find a solution that is perfect, that's going to cover 100% of the people. I know that the Democrats are saying Medicare for all and everyone's going to be covered. Even then, someone's not going to be for whatever reason. So what you need to do is you need to look for a system that lifts the most people out of poverty, and that would be, historically a kind of the laissez-faire economics, limited government that has lifted the most people out of poverty. And you're never going to get everyone out. You're never going to house everybody. It's just that's a fantasy. So I don't know that. You say, what about people who really need it? Well, that's where American exceptionalism. Americans are exceptionally generous to their neighbors, and that is that I think that becomes not a federal issue, but a local issue where people need to figure out what are we going to do ourselves to help the poor in our community. It's a lot easier to say, well, we want the government to solve it, but the government is horrible at solving anything. Whatever the government does, it does poorly. Private institutions, private charities, they do the most good with the least amount of money. So that's and if people were taxed less, then it would be easier to solve for people to use that income to help solve their own local issues.
Well, I would also bring the argument, if you gave corporations a choice between a 40% tax or giving 30% or establishing charities and giving 30% to charities, people would choose to give to charities, private charities.
It's still
probably 100
mandating something.
I understand, but it's still given a choice, right? It's given. What I'm speaking more is to again, American exceptionalism and the fact that people want to help others. It's just that they have the means to help, and I think that dollar for dollar, private entities do much more with their dollars than government run programs. So I think that the programs that are private are typically far more efficient than the public programs.
When I was a homeless addict, it was the generosity of people in my community that kept me alive. It was not a government program.
Right. Wow. Well, I tell you what, Stephen, I definitely would like to have you back on the show. I think we've uncovered some things or talked about some things that I would love to dig deeper into, because I mean, your story is very compelling, but it's also very inspiring as well, because not all stories end that way, but are in. Well, your story's not over, obviously, but not all stories not everyone has come full circle to the point that you are now, and made it out of the things that you've made it out of, and then turned around to reach back and help other people that were in the same boat. And that's inspiring to all of us. So thank you so much for being on the show. Would love to get you back. We'll have to talk and find out what day that would work, or if it'll work, or if you ever want to do this again with all the boomerang issues that we've had.
About immigration, though, maybe we should get your dad on. That would be just interesting to hear his perspective.
You know what? I would absolutely love to get Dad on the show and talk about immigration.
He would have to talk slowly, though, because sometimes his accent throws me.
Yeah, he would. I would be fun to get him on. I've talked about getting him on before, and I think he's willing. We just have to make it happen. But guys, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry for the issues later on. We are getting them cleared up. It's getting better and better. But again, we have not gotten completely past all of the issues. It seems like it's always something new. The good thing is we're not making the same mistakes twice. It's always a new one. So that's a good thing. And but thank you guys so much for being here. Hey, please help us. Please, please, please. I could say that we have some of the best subscribers out there. You guys have shown incredible support for this channel. Some of you I see every single week, and we thank you for that. And we are going to do better on getting more regular content up. I promise you that. We are very, very close to our 4,000 hours. Thank you for helping us with that. Please share this video, get it out to others, share the other videos that we have, and invite other people to the stream. Guys, let's continue to grow. And it'll allow us to continue to bring more and more content. But also, guys, I have a slight grievance with our subscribers. I hear from some of you, but I don't hear from all of you. And I'll never hear from all of you, but I don't hear from a lot of you. I want to hear, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to hear us discuss? I want to hear that from you guys. I want you guys to give us ideas. If you don't follow me on Twitter, be sure to follow me on Twitter. We'll be sure to include the Twitter handle here. What is your Twitter handle, Steven?
So I have a Twitter account, but I really don't use it. Like here's my dirty secret about Twitter. I only use it to follow John McAfee.
You should join his Discord. It's pretty crazy over there.
All right. So I was gonna plug his Twitter, but we won't do that unless you are in the John McAfee Discord. Leave Steven alone. So no, but guys, thank you very much. It was great being here. Thank you, Soder, for all your hard work.
You're welcome.
And we appreciate it. And let's look forward to being back here next week.
All right. Night, guys.
All right.
Thanks,
Good night, guys.